Once upon a time, in Slovakia, there was a father who had 7 daughters, all adult and all marriageable. But the youngest of them all, who was just 18, was the most beautiful. The father was a werewolf. One day it came into his head, what is the good of having to support so many girls? So he determined to put them all out of the way. Besides, he was hungry. He went accordingly into the forest to hew wood, to cut wood, and he ordered his daughters to bring him his lunch. It was the eldest who brought it. "Why have you come so early with the food?" said the werewolf. "Oh, father, we wish to feed you, lest you become ravenous and eat one of us." "A good lass. Sit down whilst I eat." Well, he ate, and whilst he ate, he thought of a scheme. He rose and said, "My girl, come, and I'll show you a pit I have been digging." "And what is the pit for, father?" "That we may be buried in it when we die, for poor folk are not much cared for after they are dead and gone." And so the girl went with him to the side of the deep pit, and when she went to look over the edge, he pushed her, and she fell to the bottom, where she lay stunned. Then the monster took a great stone and crushed her head, so that the poor thing breathed out her soul. After he was done, the werewolf went back to his work, and as dusk came on, the second daughter arrived, bringing him food. He told her of the pit, and brought her to it, and cast her in, and killed her, as he had killed the first. And so he dealt with all his girls up to the last. The youngest knew well that her father was a werewolf, and she was grieved that her sisters did not return. She thought, "Now where can they be? Has my father kept them for companionship, or to help him in his work? Or has he eaten them?" So she made the food which she was to take him, and crept cautiously through the wood. When she came near the place where her father was working, she heard his strokes felling timber, and smelt smoke. She saw presently a large fire, and 2 human heads, 2 of her sisters, roasting in it. Turning from the fire, she went in the direction of the axe strokes, and found her father. "See," said she, "father, I have brought you food." "That is a good lass," said he. "Now stack the wood for me, whilst I eat." "But where are my sisters?" she said. "Down in yonder valley, drawing wood," the werewolf replied. "Follow me, and I will bring you to them." They came to the pit. Then he told her that he had dug it for a grave. "Now," said he, "you must die, and be cast into the pit with your sisters." "Turn aside, father," she said, "whilst I strip off my clothes, and then slay me if you will." He turned aside, as she requested, and then, wham! She gave him a push, and he tumbled headlong into the hole he had dug for her. She fled for her life, for the werewolf was not injured, and he would soon scramble out of the pit. Now she hears his howls resounding through the gloomy alleys of the forest, and swift as the wind she runs. She hears the tramp of his approaching feet and the snuffle of his breath. Then she tosses behind her handkerchief. The werewolf seizes this with teeth and claw and rends it until it is reduced to mere scraps. In another moment he is again in pursuit, foaming at the mouth and howling dismally, "Howl!" whilst his red eyes gleam like burning coals. As he gains on her, she tosses behind her gown and bids him tear that. He seizes the gown and rips it to shreds. Then again he pursues. This time she tosses behind her apron, next her petticoat, then her shift, and at last runs, much in the condition in which she was born. Again the werewolf approaches. She races out of the forest into a hayfield and hides herself in the smallest heap of hay. Her father enters the field, runs howling about it in search of her, cannot find her, and begins to upset the different haystacks, all the while growling and gnashing his gleaming white fangs in his rage at her having escaped him. The foam flakes drop at every step from his mouth, and his skin is reeking with sweat. Before he has reached the smallest bundle of hay, his strength leaves him. He feels exhaustion begin to creep over him, and he falls to the ground, fast asleep. The daughter crept out of the hay, then snuck back through the forest to where her father had been chopping wood. Taking his axe, she then returned to where her father lay in a stupor, and bashed in his skull with the blunt side of the axe before using the blade to cleave the werewolf's head clean from his body. As murdering your father was frowned upon, even if he was a bloodthirsty werewolf, the young woman fled and emigrated to Cleveland, and may be living there yet, for no notice of her death has appeared in the newspapers. The moral of the story? Well, in the case of the werewolf's daughter, the severed head didn't fall far from the tree. If this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. My name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring such cryptids as the Night Floaters, werewolves, and the black-eyed children. So again, please consider subscribing. Please help me to reach my goal of 2,500 subs in 2022. And sometimes I also retell classic horror folk tales. Pictures used in today's video, courtesy of Pix here, that's PX here, while the music was the stately Ghost Processional by that patron of the internet, Kevin MacLeod. Thank you for listening.